Omar shoved the last stack of heavy, moth-eaten rugs aside, clearing a path through the suffocating heat of the attic. Dust motes danced in a single, sharp shaft of golden hour sunlight that cut across the floorboards. He stepped forward, his boot hitting a wooden crate with a hollow thud. There, resting on the splintered surface, sat a tarnished brass pocket watch. It looked out of place, untouched by the thick layer of grime coating everything else in the room. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed the cold, pitted metal. He picked it up, feeling the unexpected heft of the device. The surface was etched with fine, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse under his touch. He hesitated, listening to the silence of the villa, then pressed the side button. The mechanism clicked with a sound like a snapping bone. Instantly, the attic vanished. The light fractured into a blinding, violent streak of amber and sand. The air grew heavy, pulling at his lungs, and the floor beneath him dissolved into a rushing vortex of wind and light. The world slammed back into focus with the force of a physical blow. Omar hit the pavement hard, his knees scraping against rough concrete. He gasped, his lungs burning as he inhaled air that tasted of exhaust and sea salt. The silence of the attic was gone, replaced by a chaotic, rhythmic symphony of life. A boxy sedan rumbled past, its engine rattling with a metallic clatter that vibrated through the soles of his boots. He pushed himself up, his palms stinging, and looked around. The low-rise buildings were painted in shades of sun-bleached cream and sand. Above, the call to prayer drifted from a distant minaret, weaving through the honking of traffic. He reached into his pocket, expecting the smooth glass of his phone, but his fingers closed around a heavy, unfamiliar weight. He pulled it out. It was a thick, metal-cased device. He stood up, steadying himself against a lamppost. The sunlight here felt different, softer, casting long, amber shadows. He looked up at a sign swinging above a storefront. Al Diafa Cafe, 1995. The reality of the date settled in his chest like lead. He was no longer in the villa. The past was not a memory. It was the ground beneath his feet, moving, breathing, and completely unaware of his presence. Omar pressed his palms against the cafe window, the glass cold against his skin. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee and tobacco. There, at a corner table, sat his father. He looked impossibly young, his brow furrowed in concentration as he adjusted his tie for the third time. He checked his watch, his foot tapping a restless rhythm against the floor. Omar's heart hammered against his ribs. He turned his head and saw her. His mother was crossing the street, her eyes fixed on the cafe entrance. A heavy stack of university books cradled in her arms. She was only seconds away from the door. The timing was perfect. The history he knew was about to unfold exactly as it should. Omar lunged forward, his boots skidding on the uneven pavement in his desperate haste. He did not see the loose paving stone. His toe caught the edge, and he slammed directly into his mother. The impact was jarring. Books flew from her grip, skittering across the dusty concrete. She gasped, stumbling back, her face flushing with sudden frustration. She turned sharply, walking in the opposite direction. Inside, his father sighed, checked his watch one final time, and stood up to leave. The connection was broken. Omar stood frozen, the sound of his mother's retreating footsteps echoing against the stone walls. He watched her figure shrink into the distance, her pace quickening as she moved further from the cafe. Inside, his father pushed his chair back with a sharp scrape against the floor. The man stood, adjusted his collar, and walked toward the exit, his gaze fixed on the street ahead. The intersection was empty. The window of opportunity had closed. A sudden, sharp chill pierced Omar's chest, colder than the winter wind. He looked down, expecting to see his own hands, but the skin was losing its solidity. His fingers blurred, turning into a pale, shifting light that seemed to bleed into the air. He tried to clench his fist, but his palm passed through his own thumb like smoke. The world around him flickered. He staggered back, his boots dragging heavily against the pavement, but his legs felt hollow. He was becoming a ghost in his own history. Omar clawed at the air, his fingers passing through the rough texture of a nearby brick wall. He was losing his grip on the physical world. He fumbled for the brass pocket watch, his hand trembling as he brought the cold metal to his eyes. The back of the casing pulsed with a rhythmic golden light. A small engraving, previously hidden, now glowed with a sharp, piercing intensity. 24-0. The numbers shifted instantly. The 0 flickering into a 9. It was a countdown. The realization struck him with the weight of a falling stone. This was not just a malfunction of time. It was a deadline for his own existence. If the clock reached 0, he would vanish, leaving no trace of his life behind. He pressed his thumb against the glowing glass, desperate for a sensation of solidity. The watch remained firm, a singular, unyielding object in a reality that was rapidly turning into mist. He looked at the street, his vision pulsing in sync with the watch's light. The buildings seemed to lean inward, their edges blurring into gray static. He had to act. Every second he wasted staring at the numbers was a second closer to total erasure. He forced his legs to move, his boots striking the pavement with a hollow, echoing thud. He was fading, but he was still here. He had exactly 24 minutes. Omar lunged for the textbook lying in the gutter. His fingers closed around the spine, the leather cover feeling gritty and real against his dissolving skin. He pushed off the ground, his boots skidding on the pavement as he broke into a desperate sprint. The world around him shuddered. A street lamp nearby flickered, its light turning to jagged static, and the sound of distant traffic warped into a low, metallic groan. He was running against the current of time itself. Every step felt like wading through deep water, his legs heavy and unresponsive. He ignored the burning in his lungs and the way his vision blurred at the edges, the street ahead stretching and compressing like a distorted lens. His mother was 20 paces ahead, her pace steady, oblivious to the ghost chasing her through the afternoon heat. Omar opened his mouth and forced the air out. "Wait!" he shouted. He stumbled, his knee hitting the concrete, but he scrambled back up, his hands clutching the book to his chest. The buildings began to tilt. He pushed harder, his eyes locked on her retreating figure, desperate to bridge the gap before the reality he was clinging to shattered completely. Omar skidded to a halt, his chest heaving. He pulled the brass watch from his pocket, his thumb trembling as he wiped away a layer of grime. The face of the watch burned with a cold, pale luminescence. 23:45. The numbers seemed to mock him, ticking down with a mechanical precision. He was losing time, and with every passing second, the edges of his vision grew more translucent. He looked up, his gaze snapping toward the cafe window. Inside, the scene was static, a snapshot of a life he was meant to inherit. His father sat at a small table, his movements sharp and impatient. He checked his own wrist, sighed, and pushed his chair back against the floorboards. The sound of the scraping wood was faint, yet it cut through the street. Omar felt a surge of panic. If his father stood up and walked out that door, the chance would be gone forever. He looked back at the watch. The timer was relentless. He needed a catalyst, something to anchor his father to the seat and pull his mother back into the frame. He scanned the street, his eyes darting. The world was beginning to desaturate. He had less than a minute. He gripped the textbook until his knuckles turned white. Omar scanned the sidewalk, his eyes locking onto a weathered telephone booth standing near the cafe entrance. Beside it, a discarded newspaper lay crumpled against a brick wall. He lunged for the paper, his hands shaking as he snatched it up. He didn't need the news. He needed the number. He sprinted toward the booth, the soles of his boots slapping hard against the pavement. He shoved the glass door open, the hinges screaming in protest. Inside, the receiver hung by a frayed cord. He dialed the number for the cafe, his fingers moving with frantic, jerky motions. He watched through the glass as the phone on the counter inside the cafe began to ring. His father, halfway to the door, froze. The sudden, shrill sound cut through the quiet cafe, forcing him to turn back toward the desk. Omar didn't stop there. He dropped the newspaper, letting the headlines flutter across the floor, and stepped out of the booth. He needed his mother to turn around. He grabbed a heavy metal trash bin and shoved it into the path of the sidewalk, creating a deliberate, jarring obstruction. As she approached, she would have to stop. The cafe phone continued to wail, a relentless, piercing signal that pinned his father to the spot. Omar ducked behind a parked sedan, his heart hammering against his ribs. The street corner erupted in a brief, chaotic symphony. His mother halted, her path blocked by the heavy bin, and she looked up, annoyed. At that exact moment, the cafe phone stopped ringing. His father, receiver still in hand, turned toward the window, his gaze locking onto the woman standing just outside. The air between them seemed to shimmer, charged with the weight of a future that had been missing. Omar leaned against the brick wall, his legs losing their strength. He looked down at his hands. They were no longer solid. The skin had become a pale, flickering mist, transparent enough to see the texture of the pavement beneath his palms. He felt a strange, cold lightness, as if he were being unspooled from the fabric of the world. He watched them. His father stepped out of the cafe, hesitant, and spoke. His mother listened, her frustration melting into a look of genuine curiosity. They stood there, 2 points in time finally converging. The watch in his pocket grew hot, then silent, the hands freezing at the final second. Omar tried to stand, but his feet no longer felt the ground. He was a ghost in his own history. The deep orange of the sunset washed over the scene, turning the dust into gold. He saw his father offer a hand, and his mother take it. The timeline snapped into place, rigid and permanent. Omar closed his eyes, the sound of the city fading. He simply ceased to be.